So let me introduce you to Val. She was born in Brazil, or Valdirene, as her proper name is, has lived in 4 different countries and has a 10-year background in international radio news with the BBC World Services. She has a natural flair and curiosity for understanding different cultures and languages, and the impact these have in our societies, social acceptance and inclusivity. She credits her multi-heritage and multicultural background with being responsible for her empathic and grounding nature with people, both in her coaching work and in leading women's circles. A lover of communication, she has worked as an interpreter for Brazilian footballers in Arsenal and West Ham United. Woohoo! At the center of all this work is the thread of deep listening, presence, bold questioning, and a love and curiosity for understanding people. Please welcome to the stage, Val.
Thank you. Finally! Yes, the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. So, if you look at the screen for a moment, when you see these women, what do you see? Are you able to tell where it is they come from, or what their racial or ethnic background is? Well, I can give you a little hand with that, because I can tell you that all these women you see here, they're all celebrities from the country that I'm from. As you've heard, I am from Brazil. I was born in Brazil, and both my biological parents are Brazilian. At the age of 10, I also moved to the US, so at least one of you in the room will be familiar with what it's like to face American Border Patrol when you arrive in the country. A scary prospect at the best of times, but if you speak little to no English and have tanned skin, that level of scariness has gone up a bit. So, having previously only lived in Brazil, a racial democracy as we're known, my mother felt very confused and apprehensive at the questioning she was faced with at border control. So after a long period of scrutiny, she was told to tick the Latino or Hispanic box. She didn't really understand what that meant, but she did it anyways to simply get us through immigration and safely out the other side, where my dad had been waiting for over an hour. So with such mixed heritage, Brazilians camouflage very, very well. As you can see from here, this one, thank you, Ash. A little coloring of the hair, a little straightening, maybe a little less exposure to the sun can make a woman look almost like a different person. This here is me. Probably about a year or two before we moved to America. And this is also me, probably about a year after having lived there. So you can tell clearly here how a full 365 days in the sunshine, what it can do to a person's melanin when you are multiracial. So what does this have to do with biases and injustice? Well, it's mainly the stereotypes we apply to people when we subconsciously judge them by their skin color alone or by the way they look. This is Angelica, a children's TV presenter I grew up watching when I was little. You can see here her very widespread ancestral roots right across Europe. But would you be able to tell just by simply looking at her that she also has native Brazilian ancestry? I certainly wouldn't. Or Adriana Lima, the model. So this is a more typical makeup of what you see a Brazilian person as. But I'm sure you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at her that she identifies more personally as simply Afro-Brazilian, right? So Identity is something that's very, very complex. It's very nuanced, and it is definitely very, very personal. When we first moved to London, my mum and I used to go to a cafe in Edgware Road. It was called Beirut Express. And we used to walk in, and the guy serving behind the counter, they used to look at us and with a big wide smile and start speaking with us in Arabic, only to be a little confused when we told them that we didn't speak Arabic. Or when I lived in northwest London, and every time I went to the corner shop, I used to be spoken to in Turkish. I don't know why, after so many times, probably about a year and a half living there, he always used to forget that I wasn't Turkish. So I used to love that anonymity of pretty much looking like everybody else around me living in London. I loved that connection that we can make with people when we get a little curious and we start these conversations about where each of us are from. I loved it until July 22nd, 2005, when Jean-Charles Jimenez was shot dead by the Met Police outside the tube station in Stockwell. He was mistaken for a terrorist in the London tube attacks a couple of weeks prior. So all of a sudden, looking Brazilian wasn't so cool anymore, in case you might be mistaken for a terrorist. The problem with these biases and these stereotypes and judging people but purely on how they look is, unfortunately, we struggle to overcome our cultural biases. It's very difficult for us all to do because of the way we are conditioned. So this, of course, leads to misunderstandings, missed opportunities, including in workplaces, and unfortunately, conflicts and violence as well. So why is it important to develop more understanding around people and around different cultures? Well, I believe that because we live in such a vast and globalized world, it's something that we need to cultivate in one another. Yeah, we need to cultivate in ourselves this part of us that knows deeply and can develop the capacity to be compassionate. I believe that the world will become a more loving and compassionate place to be when we come from that place of understanding. And as a byproduct of that, we can exercise more justice. We can be justice. Because exercising justice simply involves us treating the other person as we would like to be treated ourselves, with the same basic levels of respect and attention and humanity, which is something that we are vastly missing at these times of trouble that we are witnessing nowadays. So, what about justice? Well, we all know injustice when we see it. We all recognize it. As women, didn't we feel the rage? And didn't we feel the shock and the fear at the news of Sarah Everard and Sabina Nessa? Now, we don't all have to see the other person's or to see ourselves in the other person's situation, because we all roared and took to our knees when we heard of George Floyd, didn't we? We didn't need to identify as a black man to be able to do that. Just the suffocating thought alone of a constricted throat was enough. So, speaking up for those who are no longer able to speak for themselves is of paramount importance in these times. Times of war, injustice, and the stripping away of people's identities. Now, I'm not going to bring my own political views on the war in the Middle East right now, But having just brought to your memory the death of George Floyd, I want to leave you with this thought. The Middle East represents the throat chakra of the world. So let us not stand by and watch the powers that be trample on it and suffocate it. I stand here on the shoulders of so many ancestors that crossed so many borders and so many oceans, and who fought so many battles along the way. And I'm also here very aware of my privilege that I am actually stood here because of my ancestors who would not put their head above the parapet for fear of their own safety and fear of their family's safety. If it wasn't for them keeping safe, I might not be here. I am here because they chose safety when they might have actually wanted to speak up. I'm here for my mum, who was often choked up and wanting to express herself, but not having the English words to do it with. So I'm here for all of them, and I'm here for all of you if you don't feel like you can speak up. I'm here for all of those in conflict areas right now who feel unsafe to do so. So I wanted to leave you with this invitation. As you walk out of here today and you find yourselves in your everyday lives, please do get curious about people and get curious about yourselves and about your own ancestry. We all, if we go back far enough, come from the same thing. We all come from a little stardust, don't we? And as a last invitation, I want to invite you to think about your privilege. And whenever you see injustice, if you feel able to, please do speak up. Thank you.